outrage from opposition parties in El Salvador as the president sends troops into parliament. An electoral revolution in Ireland as Sinn Féin takes the lead in the general election. And protesters in Britain call on the Prime Minister to halt the deportation of 50 people to Jamaica. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla González in Quito, and this is from the South. We begin in El Salvador, where President Nayib Bukele sent soldiers into parliament on Sunday as he demands that lawmakers approve a loan to boost security. Despite the military presence, only 28 members of the parliament turned up to Sunday's extraordinary session, meaning it was again without a quorum to vote on the $109 million loan. Members from the left-wing FMLN and the right-wing Arena parties refused to attend. Bukele said he would give the parliament one more week to pass the legislation.
If these scoundrels don't approve this week the territorial control plan, then we will return here on Sunday. We ask God again for wisdom, and we say, God, you asked me for patience, but these scoundrels don't want to work for the people.
And the FMLN party says the government sent security forces to the homes of its lawmakers and those of Arena to threaten them and try to force them to attend the session of parliament.
If, by making illegal use of state institutions, our people continue to be persecuted, our lawmakers and their families simply, we are making you responsible for this. You can't play with this. If you think confrontation and could be faced, we only bring collateral damage to one side. You are wrong. You are wrong.
Our correspondent Ernesto Ábalos sent us a report from San Salvador.
Sunday was a very intense day here in El Salvador. The FMLN was holding its national convention in the morning, where the Secretary General, Oscar Ortiz, made it clear that the FMLN rejected the call by President Nayib Bukele for an extraordinary session of Parliament to approve the $109 million loan for his security plan. He said he gave full support to the party's lawmakers not to attend, since the Legislative Assembly was holding regular sessions where this plan could perfectly well be discussed. The extraordinary session was called for 3 p.m. on Sunday. The president arrived an hour later and spoke to his supporters outside the Assembly. There he used strong words to accuse the FMLN and Arena lawmakers of being linked to gangs known as pandillas, and claimed that these gangs may have received money from these parties during elections. After speaking for half an hour, the president went into the Legislative Assembly and made a prayer to God, where he said he had asked for patience and more patience to avoid getting into a conflict between the legislature and the executive. He said he would give the members of the parliament another week to approve this loan, and he said if they didn't do that, next Sunday he would return to the Assembly. He also called on the population to punish these lawmakers of El Salvador's two traditional parties in next year's legislative elections and remove them from office.
That was Ernesto Ábalos from El Salvador. A revolution in the ballot box. That is how the leader of Sinn Féin described the unprecedented success of her nationalist party in Saturday's general election. The first results on Sunday night gave Sinn Féin the largest number of first preference votes, with 24.5%. For the first time, they beat the two traditional parties that have alternated in power for decades. Fianna Fáil had 22% and the governing Fine Gael had 21%. Ireland's single transferable voting system means Fianna Fáil is still predicted to win the most number of seats in Parliament, and the difficult coalition talks are expected.
This is not a protest vote. This is certainly an election that is historic in proportions. This is changing the shape and the mould of Irish politics. This is not a transient thing. This is just the beginning. The best outcome is a government without Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, so that's the first thing that I want to test, whether or not that is possible. I also have consistently said that I will talk to and listen to everybody. I think that's what grown-ups do. I think that's what democracy demands.
And another country handling elections is Cameroon. Vote counting is underway following the country's parliamentary and municipal elections. The ballot was overshadowed by violence and a boycott by the opposition. The ruling People's Democratic Movement is expected to retain its parliamentary majority. Official results are expected within 2 weeks. The polls were characterized by a low turnout in the English-speaking regions. Those who want an independent state for the marginalized English-speaking regions call for a complete boycott of the polls and threaten those who wish to take part.
We didn't even get a third of what we expected, because a center of 400 people ends up with 50 voters, 70 voters. Really, it's a bit of a pity. So maybe the awareness was not good, or maybe the watchword of those who launched the boycott was observed.
South African opposition leader Julius Malema has said his party will not support calls by other opposition parties to pass a vote of no confidence against President Cyril Ramaphosa.
We will not support ATM motion of no confidence. We don't want clownish things here. I mean, the ATM didn't really us. So when we did the motions of no confidence ourselves against other people before, we speak to everyone. When you know your strength, you can't just wake up in the morning and say you're going to pass a motion of no confidence. You don't talk to people and then just assume they will support you. No, it doesn't work like that. There is no motion of no confidence we're going to support. We're going to fight Cyril our own way, and we're not going to be hijacked by any opportunism, any corrupt elements, nothing. We will hold Cyril accountable, and we will do it our own way. And there's no one who's going to blackmail us.
The 33rd African Union Summit, which opened on Sunday in Ethiopia, has concluded with a call for African solutions for African problems. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is taking over from Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi as chairperson of the continental body, said the AU must take a proactive role in resolving conflicts across the continent. He accused the international community of sidelining Africa from initiatives aimed at ending the conflict in Libya, and also rejected the United States and Israel's so-called Middle East peace plan.
With regards to the US-inspired plan for the Palestinians, that as I listened to it and as I read everything that's written about it, it brought to mind a horrible history that we as South Africa have gone through.
The case of Palestine best illustrates the fragility of international commitments. The American-Israeli plan, described as the deal of the century, conceived and drawn without any international consultation, and worse still, in the absence of the main concerned parties, the Palestinians, is yet another violation of multiple United Nations and African Union resolutions, and further disregard for the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people.
And thousands of Moroccans took to the streets to protest Trump's deal of the century, calling it a theft of the century. Carrying Palestinian flags, the demonstrators, including local politicians and trade unionists, marched in Rabat chanting "Long live Palestine." People also called for a boycott of U.S. products, denounced the Trump administration as enemies of peace, and chanted, "Palestine is not for sale." Trump's plan has also been rejected by the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, two organizations in which Morocco is a prominent member.
Today, we shouldn't be talking about the deal of the century, but rather the theft of the century is the hot dog of the century.
We are taking part today in this march in Rabat to support the Palestinian situation and to say no as Moroccans, Arabs and Muslims, no to the agreement of the century, which does not represent either the free Moroccans, Arabs or Muslims, We're also here to say, like most of the participants here, that the Palestinian situation is everyone's business.
We'll take a short break now, but after that, we'll have more on the protests by all workers in Brazil. So don't go away.
Who's moving the chess man? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical move. Investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back. More news at this hour. More than 170 British members of parliament have urged Prime Minister Boris Johnson to halt plans to deport 50 people to Jamaica on Tuesday. This comes a few days after protesters held late-night demonstrations at Downing Street, calling on the government to stop its plans to charter a flight to send dozens of people to an unfamiliar country. It's linked to the Windrush scandal, as a recently leaked report said the government should consider ending the deportation of foreign-born offenders who came to the UK as children. A representative for Black Lawyers for Justice movement, Lee Jaspers, described the UK planned deportation of 50 people to Jamaica on Tuesday as disingenuous and racist.
We're calling on the Jamaican government in particular to deny the British plane the ability and the right to land, because there can be no confidence in this government's ability to get these decisions right. They've been guilty of racism in the past. They're guilty of racism in relation to this flight. Windrush demonstrates that. We've got the famous comedian, Rolf Harris, an Australian, very high repute, sang the world-famous tune that Tied My Kangaroo Down, guilty of serious paedophilia offences here in the United Kingdom. He's not being deported to Australia. We've just had a Asian young man born abroad, released from jail, committed terrorist attacks on the streets of Breton in South London. He wasn't subject to deportation. Why is this seemingly specially reserved for black people and people from Africa and the Caribbean? So you're right, there is a double standard, and that's my appeal to the general Caribbean and African nations out there. Please see beyond the hype and the propaganda of this government. The reality is that we are here as black British people being subject to the most horrendous and egregious infringements of our human rights. We're seeing legal action and a judicial review in the High Court being lodged now. We hope to get an oral hearing in front of a judge this afternoon. If we are successful, then that could ground the flight, but we're still waiting to get access to a judge in order to have that hearing. The second type of action is there is a mass picket of 10 Downing Street taking place in the next couple of hours, where we can expect hundreds, if not thousands of people to turn out, even though it's windy, it's rain, it's cold right now in London.
And now we turn to South America. Bolivia's Supreme Electoral Court is putting obstacles in the way of some of the main candidates from the movement towards socialism for the May 3rd elections. They include presidential candidate Luis Arce and the former president Evo Morales. The court has given them 3 days to provide allegedly missing documents to approve their nominations. The requirements include evidence that they are not involved in any criminal case, have served in the military, speak 2 languages, and are permanent residents of the country. At the weekend, thousands gather in Sacaba in Bolivia's Chapare region for the official launch of the presidential campaign of the MAS party. Youth unions, along with campesino and indigenous movements, joined the presidential ticket of Arce and Choquehuanca for the festive event. Throughout the weekend, citizens have also been calling for an end to political persecution of MAS leaders by the de facto authorities. During the rally, the candidates called on all Bolivians to participate in the general elections, which will come a mere 6 months after the military-backed coup that ousted President Morales.
It has been more than 500 years of lies, and we have decided to return to the truth. Our political instrument will bring us back to the path of the truth.
This weekend, the city of Rio de Janeiro hosted a cultural festival to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Brazil's Workers' Party. So let's have a look.
With 1.5 million members, the Workers' Party is one of the largest political organizations in Latin America. In 2020, it celebrates 40 years of existence, and as part of the celebrations, the main progressive parties from Brazil came together in an event that could represent the formation of a historic front ahead of the upcoming regional elections.
A united front to defend democracy and the rights of the people. A front that can drive Brazil forward with the support of the people to defeat Bolsonaro's government.
If we can set aside our differences as left-wing parties and we can recognize that these times call for unity and political action, then we can decide on whether or not we can form alliances, but always prioritizing our common interests.
The Workers' Party is made up of millions of workers from across Brazil, of different genders, ethnicities, and social groups. Many of them took part in this festival, which also celebrated the recent liberation of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
During the time he was in prison, we were there in Curitiba to give ourselves to the fight. And today, it couldn't be any different.
My children can go to school today thanks to Lula. If it weren't for him, we'd be in a very bad situation. He needs to be president again.
The euphoria rises as Lula arrives, accompanied by the former president of Uruguay, José Mujica. Their speech was aimed at the youth of Brazil, as under Bolsonaro, the nation suffers from an unemployment rate of 12% and 41% of workers work in irregular conditions.
The world will become a better place if the youth shows compromise, if they can spend a part of their lives fighting for justice and equality.
For Lula, who left office in 2010 with an approval rating of 87% and recently served 580 days in prison due to political persecution, the message is clear.
If we lose interest, if we have fear, if we don't take the streets, if we don't raise our voices and we don't demand our rights, then we are lost.
The party that was in power for 4 consecutive terms is determined to fight against the far right, but it will also seek to regain the trust of many in order to lead a social reconstruction that goes beyond the ballot box.
A strike at Brazil's state-controlled oil company Petrobras is now into its 10th day. About 20,000 workers at 91 sites are taking part in the nationwide stoppage, triggered by the dismissal of 1,000 workers at a fertilizer plant in the south of Brazil. The Oil Workers Union says the dismissals are part of a wider plan to privatize the country's biggest company. They want the dismissed workers reinstated and the company to comply with the collective labor agreement. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Ignacio Lemos, has more on the progress of this strike.
Saludos estudios, comienza la semana y se mantiene la huelga de
another week, and the strike by Brazilian oil workers continues at Petrobras facilities and other sites run by the subsidiaries of the state-controlled oil company. The stoppage now in its 10th day is affecting 19 different plants in 13 Brazilian states, with 20,000 workers taking part. Petrobras says it will contract emergency workers to keep its operations going. The workers say this is an attempt to break up the strike, and retired Petrobras workers have issued a statement saying they will not take part in this attempt to break up the strike. The strike is against the laying of 1,000 workers at Perfect Fertilizer Factory in Paraná State, but also against other layoffs at other plants, which the workers say are part of a breakup of Petrobras in order to privatize both the company and the huge deep water oil fields of the Brazilian coast.
That was Ignacio Lemos from Brazil. We'll take another short break, but coming up, we have an update on the death toll due to the coronavirus in China. So stay with us.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursday, only on FtS.
And as we've said before, the death toll from the new coronavirus has risen. It is now 908 people in mainland China, as millions of people start returning to work after an extended holiday designed to slow the spread of the virus. The National Health Commission said 97 people died on Sunday, making it the deadliest day since the outbreak started. The number of confirmed cases nationwide now stands at 40,171. The outbreak has turned most cities into ghost towns, with most people staying indoors. But on Monday, traffic returned to the roads as millions made their way to work.
Currently, there are 35,982 confirmed cases, among which 6,484 are severe cases. There are altogether 3,281 cured cases and 90 deaths. The cumulative number of confirmed cases is 40,171. There are now 23,589 suspect cases, and we have traced 399,487 close contacts.
We now head to the Middle East. Israeli planes have carried out airstrikes on the besieged Gaza Strip, causing extensive damage, as reported by local media. The Israeli military claimed that the airstrikes were a response to a rocket that was allegedly fired at Israel from Gaza on Sunday. There are no reports of any casualties so far. The incident comes amid tensions in the region in the wake of U.S. President Donald Trump's presentation of the so-called Middle East peace plan. Meanwhile, Israeli authorities on Saturday imposed a blockade on Palestinian agricultural exports. According to local media, Israel's security forces have set up checkpoints to stop trucks carrying Palestinian agricultural products from leaving the occupied West Bank through Jordan, the occupied West Bank's only direct export route to the outside world. With all borders controlled by Israel, the Palestinian economy is highly vulnerable to Israeli sanctions.
This indicates that the Israeli side does not want political peace and does not want any development process for the Palestinians. Rather, Israel wants to place the Palestinian economy under Israeli control to make the Palestinian market a consumer market and not a productive market, so that there is no financial sustainability on which to build political independence for the Palestinians.
Reports are stating that Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, the leader of Germany's right-wing Christian Democratic Union, will no longer bid to replace Angela Merkel as Chancellor. Kramp-Karrenbauer took over as CDU chairwoman in December 2018 and was tipped to take over as Chancellor in 2021. This comes 2 days after Merkel fired Government Commissioner Christian Hirte for congratulating a state governor elected with the help of the far-right Alternative for Germany party. It is considered a taboo for mainstream parties to collaborate with the AfD. Britain and Ireland were lashed by strong winds and torrential rain on Sunday as Storm Ciara left homes without power, wiped out sports events, and disrupted travel around northwestern Europe. The storm left some 45,000 homes without power in eastern England and Ireland. The bad weather also hit France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Switzerland and Germany throughout Sunday, causing scores of flights to be cancelled. About 120 flights to and from Amsterdam's Schiphol, the third busiest airport in Europe, were cancelled. And with that, we end our news brief, but you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, you can find us on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And be sure to also join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.